Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky. Today's episode, we're discussing leadership skills for the modern workplace. Now, Corina, I want to talk to you about micromanagement because this seems to be a thing. What is the real issue with micromanagement today? And how does not understanding micromanagement impact women leaders?
Absolutely. So the problem with micromanagement today is that people are so afraid, managers are so afraid of being labeled a micromanager that they don't manage enough. If you are in my age range, Gen X, you may have suffered in the when you started your career in the 90s under the thumb of a micromanager. And we all know the damage that a micromanager can do to an employee. But unfortunately, the fear and the folklore of micromanagement has really led newer managers today to think that any type of oversight is actually micromanagement, and that's just not true. Doing a check-in, asking for an update, giving constructive feedback, those things are not micromanagement, they're just management. And I think for women in leadership roles, maybe they're used to being under the microscope a little more closely. Maybe they feel that they're judged a little more if they check in too often with an employee, and they are afraid of being accused of a micromanager. But I train women leaders on how to push back on that and say, you know what, I'm not micromanaging, I'm just managing. And you don't want to go too far in the other direction and become a macro manager. So really what I advise women leaders to do is to check in with their employees and ask them, am I providing enough support? Do you need a little more support from me, a little more guidance and help from me? And then that way you can find that management balance of not managing too much and not managing too little.
And I love that. To me, that's just communicating with the people that you're working with. But I want to go to the next level now about delegating. Everyone's told to delegate, but sometimes it's just so much easier and faster to do it yourself. But that's a problem as well. So why is delegating such an important skill for women in the workplace?
I think we are all familiar with the fact that women end up taking on a lot of what we call invisible work. And invisible work could be extra tasks that don't fit into your job description. It could be the mentoring, it could be the DEI efforts, it could be being on the committee or planning the social event. And if your plate is starting to overflow because of that invisible work, first of all, the invisible work shouldn't be happening. But until we can fix that, women need to make sure that their workload isn't, flowing over on their plate. And in order to do that, you have to be really effective at delegation. And to your point, it's so easy to say things like, oh, it's faster and easier if I do it myself. And sometimes that is the case. But it's only faster the first time you do it because then you're stuck doing your employee's job. And if you are going to look like an effective leader, you really need to be the workflow, not where the work stops. You can't be the bottleneck for the work. And you just don't look effective if you're not delegating. But for any woman who finds that she has to take on some of these extra tasks that don't really fit in her job description, you need to make sure you can get other work off your plate so that you can focus on those higher level tasks that you're being paid to do because you're not being paid to do your employee's job.
This is very true. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum then. What is delegation disappointment?
Delegation disappointment is when a manager finally delegates work to an employee. Maybe they're feeling good because they finally got something off their plate, but then unfortunately the work comes back to them either insufficient, meaning it's not quite done to the quality they need, or the work didn't get done at all. And this is usually when the manager starts telling themselves stories like it's faster and easier if I do it myself, as you just said, or they just kind of resign themselves that this is work that they're going to have to do, and that is absolutely not effective. I think what most managers are operating with is an incomplete process for delegating. So delegating is not simply assigning work; it's an actual process that starts with communicating expectations, doing check-ins, giving constructive feedback to try and improve performance. And it's really important that if an employee is doing work for you and the work is not up to par, that you show them why it's not up to par and you give them a chance to do that work again. So there is upfront effort for long-term gain. And that's what a lot of the women who come through my programs need to understand, that it's not about taking the work back and doing it yourself. It's about investing in that delegation process so you can get your employee to a place where they are confident and competent, and then they can support you in your role.
And I love that. I mean, it basically comes down to communication yet again. which is really, really important with, whether you're working with somebody or a relationship. But when we come back from this commercial break, I really want to get into the importance of, should women strive to be irreplaceable at work? Because a lot of people think, well, no, they need me, but you're not always needed. So please don't go away. We'll be right back with more.